Hello, and welcome to Improbable Things. I'm J. Grace Pennington, and this is my podcast where I share 6 improbable thoughts before breakfast, which consists of 6 thoughts about reading, writing, or storytelling in general. And I am back from my holiday break, got my 6 things, and since it's been quite a while, I have a lot of stuff to share with y'all, so let's get started. So number 1, I wanted to give a little update on my novella Southeaster Lodge for the Very Bookish Romance holiday collection. And that has been fully edited, sent in, and actually releases on the 14th of this month. So you'll be able to get that along with the other novellas in the collection very soon here. And I've read one of the others so far to help beta read it for its author, and really enjoyed it. Such a sweet story. So I can for sure say that I think you're going to enjoy those two, and I know the other authors involved are just wonderful writers, and so I'm really excited to read all of them and to get them released and just be able to share Southeaster Lodge with y'all. It's different than what I normally write, but it was a lot of fun. And I think if you've read or seen Jane Austen's Northanger Abbey, you'll be able to appreciate the parallels. But even if you haven't, my editor hasn't read or seen it, and he said he was still really able to enjoy the story just for what it was. So hopefully that'll be the case. But anyway, yeah, it'll be releasing on the 14th, the whole Very Bookish Romance collection. So I'm looking forward to that. Number 2, with a new year, of course, there's new goals, new schedule. And so I have a couple of ways I'm going to try to get more writing done this year. One thing that I'm going to do is not have hard and fast deadlines. I'm not working on projects with other people, and I'm not giving deadlines for my own projects to myself, but I do want to work very consistently on my things. So I'm kind of more having a daily goal than a, sort of like I would like to get, 2 firmament books out this year, but I'm not telling myself I'm having them done by such and so time, because it's just hard to commit to those kinds of things with babies around, and I don't want my writing to, get me too busy. I want to just I need to be able to be flexible. So anyway, but I did one thing that is very important to me, as I mentioned, is getting some more firmament books out. So I am working daily, except for Sundays, on Progenitor, the next firmament book. And I don't have a word count goal. I'm basically trying to work at just at least 10 minutes on writing it. So whatever that looks like, I've only been doing it for a few days now, and it's been going well. And I did get the sort of basic outline completed. It's always funny how a story will seem very complete in my head, and then I sit down to write the outline and I realize I don't really actually have a story. I just have sort of a beginning and an end and maybe one thought about something that happens in the middle, but it's never a plot. And so that's why I outline, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about later. But I am enjoying working on this one. I do think it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm hoping to be able to get it out in a few months. But like I said, no deadlines for this year, so we'll see what happens. And then number 3, I am also trying to get a lot more content on Kindle Vella this year. So I've put out 2 new Vellas. The first one is just kind of random thoughts. So it's called 3 a.m. Thoughts, because I tend to have a lot of thoughts these days around 3 a.m. it seems, whether it's because I'm up taking care of the baby or just up because I tend to have pretty bad insomnia. And for some reason, my brain can be pretty sharp at that hour of the morning, which I really wish that it would be asleep at that hour and that I would be sharp later in the day. But I'll take what I can get. So I started kind of jotting down a few of the thoughts, and I thought I would share some of those on Vella. So I have 3 a.m. thoughts. And then I decided to move my mini reviews for all the books I read last year onto Vella instead of my blog. So I started that yesterday as well and got to review some really awesome books. So as always on Kindle Vella, the first 3 episodes are free. So if you did want to check any of those out, you can. So far they just each have 1 episode, so it's all free. But I'm excited to get more on there because Vella's done really well for me, and I want to just be more consistent in getting stuff up on there. So I'm excited to see how those 2 projects go. So number 4, I know I've talked a lot about teaching my oldest, Violet, how to read, and it's been really fun these past few weeks to watch her reading just kind of explode. Like, she all of a sudden is trying to read everything, like anywhere we drive, if she's looking at a box of cereal, if she's using stickers that have words on them, the ones that are like, good job, way to go, you did it, or whatever, those kinds of things, like the reward stickers, anything. She's always trying to read it. And if it's a pretty simple word, she can read it very easily. And then she'll try her best with the more complex words and, ask me if she's right. But it's so much fun to not only see her ability improve, but her interest, because she enjoyed the reading lessons before, but she didn't really have an urge to try to read other things. And now she has it. Like, she is trying to read everything she sees. And so I don't think it's going to be long before she's able to really read stories. And that's what I've been trying to tell her is the most exciting thing, because I'll tell her, when you can read any book you want, in the whole world. You can learn anything, you can read any story. Like, it's so exciting. And it's just, I just absolutely am loving it. And I remember seeing some of my younger siblings go through that, and it's just so fun. And then my second, April, she started saying lately, she's like, Mommy, I can't read. I don't know how to read. And I'm telling her, that's okay. I'll teach you how to read, and maybe we'll start later this year. I don't know. They're just both so different that I know they're both going to have very different journeys on reading and learning in school. But anyway, so much fun. I absolutely love it. Number 5, am I currently reading? I did make it to 100 books last year, so that was a lot of fun. And then for my first book this year, I grabbed the book Prophet by Frank Peretti off of my shelf. And Frank Peretti has long been one of my favorite authors, and this, I think, is his only book for adults that I haven't read. I think he has some children's books that I've never been that interested in, but I'm pretty sure this is the last of his adult books that I haven't read, and I don't know why. I've just never gotten around to it, but I thought that I might as well. And so I have only read a few chapters, but really enjoying it so far, really looking forward to seeing where it goes. I knew nothing about it. I didn't know what it was about, and I can already see that it involves, the topic of abortion and the abortion politically and morally and all of that. And so I'm sure that's going to be intense. And his books are always quite intense. But it's definitely already pulling me in. And his very first book that I read was Monster. And I think it was really the first modern book I'd ever read. I really grew up just reading, classics and older books. And I just found it so exciting. And he did a great job in that book with his theme and what he was trying to communicate. And it really inspired me as a writer to be like, I could talk about important things like this through a really exciting story. And so he's always been a big inspiration of mine. So I'm glad I'm finally getting around to reading this one. And then number 6, I mentioned earlier that I wanted to talk a little bit more about outlining, which I'm sure sounds very exciting, but it's just anytime I work on outlining, and like I said, I sit down and realize how little I actually have planned in my head, it gets me thinking about the planner versus pantser debate. So as a writer, do you plan and outline and all of that, or do you just do it by the seat of your pants and just write as you go? And people ask me this, and I always say I'm a little of both. Like, I would say I'm a planner because I do make outlines, but I also don't make very intense outlines. Like my outline will consist of 12 parts, 12 story beats, and there's maybe a sentence for each one. And I'll do some other planning, but it's not very structured. I'll usually just sit down and type out thoughts I have about generally how the story and the plot is going to go. But that's really the extent of my planning at the beginning. Just very basic, very bare bones. And then once I get into the story, I'll generally start writing, hit a wall, realize I need to figure some more stuff out, go back to my planning free writing document and just plan out some more things, figure out some more plot points or some more, things that need to happen to make the story actually interesting. And then I'll go back and write some more. And so generally I'm kind of back and forth like that. But one thing that I've always said when people sort of argue about this or talk about which one you are is that I find it very difficult to imagine that anyone can be 100% of either. Like you have to be some mixture of the two. Even if you don't make any outline, you still are doing some, even if it's just a kernel of planning in your head. Like you still had something in mind when you started the story that you're basing your writing around. And so even if you're just planning in your head, which I honestly don't personally know any writers that 100% do that. Usually there's at least a little bit of outlining, even if it is very bare bones, like I said. But like I said, even if you're not doing that on paper, you are doing it in your head. And then even if you're the biggest planner around and you have like a big board with plot points written out on index cards that you move all around and you write out exactly what every scene is going to look like before you write it and all of that, you still get to a point where you have to leave the outline, leave the planning, and do the actual writing, get that actually flowing, and make up the details and the wording and all of those things as you go. And also, even if you do plan, there are generally times where you're in the story and it's going to take an unexpected turn. You're going to realize something that's better than what you planned, or something that's just not working, or just something catches your imagination that you hadn't realized before, and you're off in a little bit different direction. And that'll happen to me pretty often. And sometimes it changes the plot, and then sometimes it's just a little detour, and then I come back to what I had. But either way, like, it's such an organic thing, storytelling, that there may be, such a spectrum when it comes to planning versus writing by the seat of your pants. But there always has to be some idea of what you're doing going forward, and there always has to be some point at which you leave the map and just start driving. And that's an analogy that I always think, is why I choose to do some specific outlining, is because I feel like, if you did use the analogy of getting in a car and setting off on a journey, you can't just start driving in any direction and just randomly flip a coin at every intersection. Like, you have no idea where you would turn up whatsoever, or you might just turn it back home. Even if you're not going to use a map, or even if you are going to take detours, you have some idea in mind of where you're trying to get to. And so there's always going to be some mixture of the two. But for me, I find personally that some form of planning and outlining is vital, or my story is just going to wander all over the place and be super boring. And yes, you can fix those things in editing, and a lot of things will have to be fixed in editing. But the more you know what you're setting out to do and have the plot already, you already know the plot's going to work and where it's going and things like that, the more you do that ahead of time, the less work you'll have to do in editing later, which is always nice. So yeah, I kind of have a mixture of the two approach. And yeah, so I'm glad that I sat down and did that for Progenitor. And I do know that there are places where I'm going to get to where I realize the outline's very thin and something's not working, and I'm going to have to go back and figure some new things out. But that's okay. It's kind of all part of the journey, and it is fun to have some things in there that are unexpected and surprising. So yeah, that's the approach that I like to take. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you for bearing with me during my holiday break. I'm really glad that I'm back this morning, that I was able to get up early and share all these thoughts with you. As always, please let me know your thoughts on any of this. If you have a reading goal for the new year, I would love to hear about it. If you do any writing, tell me whether you like to plan or to what extent you like to do that. And just let me know what you're reading and how you like it, and maybe I'll get some ideas for my to-read list for this year. So thank you again so much for listening. I hope that you all have a great day and a great weekend ahead, and stay improbable. Bye.